The economic freedom fighters has raised concerns about the alleged theft of 7 billion rands of security officers' pension funds by municipalities and private security companies.
So we're an organization that represents the interests of people such as those who are affected by what we have deemed the mass looting of workers' pension funds. So when the Financial Sector Conduct Authority released the report, which was released in September 2023, that there are 712 municipalities that have been deducting money from its employees but not paying it forward to municipal pension funds, and that there are 2,200 and so private security companies that have been doing the same. That touched us, and we decided to ring the alarm much earlier this year, actually in January. And from there, we had meetings with the Department of Labor, with the CCMA, with the National Bargaining Council, to try to get a sense as to what is happening.
The Private Security Industry Regulating Authority, SERA, responded to the allegations by the EFF, saying it had prosecuted over 700 companies for failing to meet their pension-paying obligations.
SERA has implemented several key actions. Referral of complaints. SERA, through its complaints unit, has actively referred cases brought forward by security officers to the Bargaining Council for further investigation and resolution. This ensures that every complaint receives appropriate attention and can be addressed by relevant authority.
SERA said this demonstrated its proactive approach in addressing non-compliance and protecting the interest of security officers.
In terms of law enforcement investigations, in addition to referring complaints, SERA's Law Enforcement Department has investigated and prosecuted several cases under its jurisdiction. These actions highlight SERA's commitment to upholding compliance and enforcing regulations to protect the rights of security officers.
The economic freedom fighters has raised concerns about the alleged theft of 7 billion rands of security officers' pension funds by municipalities and private security companies. The EFF blames the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, and the Private Security Industry Regulating Authority, SERA, for failing to deal with this issue.
Section 13A of the Pension Funds Act compels all employers to ensure that they pay that money towards the relevant pension funds within 7 days of having deducted it from a worker's salary. So that hasn't happened. It's suspicious in itself. So there's a collaboration between those pension fund administrators, in our view, those municipal managers and those employers, to deduct that money and not pay it for to the relevant pension funds, because I think they presumed that there'll never be a situation where there's retirement at the same time of individuals. So whenever they need to make payouts, there'll always be some amount of money they'll be able to allocate for those purposes, because people don't retire simultaneously. What the trick is now is that there's been the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill of 2023, the two-part system that has been signed into law, where there can be situations where people actually withdraw amounts of money at the same time, because it's allowed to be done on a yearly basis. Now, those workers who work in municipalities and those who work for private security companies are going to encounter a challenge now with that legislation, because they're going to go and want to withdraw an amount from their pension fund as the law now allows them to, and it is at that point they'll realize that there's no money there. So municipal managers, SERA is involved, fund managers, possibly asset managers, because we know in South Africa that pension funds are used to do various investments to so-called grow these pension funds themselves. So there's a collaboration, and I think what made us more suspicious is that the Minister of Finance is not acting, and he has got a dubious history with pension funds himself. So there's a deep rot, which is why we're calling for an ad hoc committee of inquiry in Parliament. George Municipality is the biggest one that is in areas in the Western Cape. They haven't paid towards the pension fund of municipal workers for 246 months. That's a DA-run municipality. So as Mossel Bay, almost more than 200 months they haven't paid. Also DA-run Umsunduzi municipality, which is run by the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, hasn't paid in over 100 months. Motu local municipality, which is run by the IFP, hasn't paid also in over 100 months. So municipalities across South Africa, municipalities in the Free State, in the Northwest, in the Northern Cape, there's no municipality that is not implicated in this. It seems to be only in Gauteng, where it's only the Western municipality that is in areas for about 6 months. But generally in Gauteng, there seems to be compliance. But it seems to be municipalities which would ordinarily be characterized as rural municipalities, where there's no much, not metropolitans, where there isn't much attention. You won't find your Cape Metro, you won't find your Nelson Mandela Bay, you won't find your Johannesburg, because possibly there's a lot more activism and eyes of the media on those areas. But where our people don't necessarily have access to information, access to resources of media to be able to speak out, That seems to be where the focus of these crimes are, and the leaders of the so-called Government of National Unity are heavily involved in terms of they are in control of the municipalities themselves. It's an ominous sign. It's a very bad sign of the type of governance that has now presided over South Africa at a national level. Because if you can't have appropriate financial systems in place to execute a very simple task, you have the systems to withdraw the money every month from a worker's salary. What makes it difficult to hand over that money to people? No one should even touch that money. It shouldn't even occur as part of the revenue generating areas for a municipality. It shouldn't be allocated for any activity the municipality must exercise, whether it's to pay its debt, whether it's to maintain infrastructure. That money is for labor costs, and those labor costs are the pension funds of workers. So that money shouldn't even be a discussion even on a municipal budget, because the task is to deduct it from a worker, hand it over to a pension fund. The fact that that line of stream of moving that income from one place to another has been disrupted for periods up to 240 months shows deliberate corruption.
SERA is also engaged directly with the Provident Fund, raising concerns about its capacity to effectively manage the administration of pension payments. The organization has questioned how companies were permitted to default on their payments over extended periods without timely interventions from Provident Fund. SERA has prosecuted over 700 companies for failing to meet their pension payment obligations. This demonstrates SERA's proactive approach in addressing non-compliance and protecting the interests of security officers.
The Red Berets say Kotongwane has failed to hold private security companies and municipalities accountable for the theft of workers' pension funds because he himself faces similar allegations.
I think it's two factors. It's Kotongwane's reputation with pension funds is dubious. That makes us believe that's why he's reluctant. With Canyon Springs, for example, he was a director, his wife was a chairperson, and they drew Kotongwane's salary from a loan that they took from Trillion Investments, which managed the pension funds of textile workers at the time between 2008 and 2011. And as the chairperson of that company, Kotongwane was being paid from that 93 million that was sourced from Trillion Investments. So this is where the role of asset managers come in, because an asset manager will take a pension fund's money and promise various investments, be it loans or commodities, that they'll grow it in that instance. And Kotongwane was a beneficiary of a corrupt asset manager's role in transferring money from a pension fund under the guise of seeking to grow that money in itself. So they received that money. Kotongwane drew a salary from that money from a Canyon Springs company, which was a shell, by the way, which was in debt for about 58 million. And he got that money. When there was an inquiry into it, they deemed it as mismanagement and bad investments. And that money was never paid back to about 20,000 workers in the textile and clothing industry. And those are mainly women who are till today destitute, and till today that money hasn't been paid back. So that history of Kotongwane, and the fact that we've been trying to engage with him for 8 months and he's just not been cooperative. They've only noted a receipt of our letter to him where we tried to give him guidance as to how to address this issue. Gives us a sign that he might be complicit, not only complicit, but directly involved. The second factor I would think is that security guards and municipal workers are some of the lowest in the working class. So people don't necessarily care. If this was affecting workers in banks, workers in the financial sector, if it was affecting members of parliament, if a member of parliament who is removed after 5 years from parliament and they try to access their pension fund and they are told it's not there, that would be a story. But because it's security guards, the lowest of the low, people from the slums, no one cares about that story, which is why the EFF has been arrogantly and persistently trying to put it on the front pages of South Africa's consciousness. In our meetings with the FSCA, for example, they told us that the tendency in the private security sector is that a company will be open for a period of 3 to 5 years, and they will not be compliant with paying over the pensions. And when the time for them to be sanctioned comes, that company will close down, be declared insolvent or bankrupt, and then they'll go and open another company with a different name, with different representatives. So that is the culture of avoiding this accountability there. A worker who would have worked for a private security company 10 years ago will look for that office now and find that it is a shop or something like that. So we need to be able to do and track down that process, and that needs a committee of inquiry. And one of the avenues we're going to do as well, which is a mechanism in Parliament, is to hold public gatherings and dialogues to allow people to come forward who've been affected by the matter, so that we can trace as many of these workers as far as possible. As the EFF, we've received complaints of about 246 companies from people. This is not part and parcel of the FSCA report in itself. So we're going to keep making that call for people to come forward and not be scared to be victimized. And that's the process that we need to undertake. So one of the crises which is happening in that sector is that there's a corruption in the issuing of operational licenses. So people who do not have the financial capacity to run a private security company are able to purchase private security operational licenses from SERA in itself. So there's corruption in that sector as well. So people who don't have capacity to run a company viably financially, of course, won't be able to pay towards a pension fund. The FSCA raised this concern with us as well. The second concern is that municipalities in South Africa are not only themselves not complying with this Pension Fund Act, Section 13A, they are also contracting private security companies without any financial capacity to not only remunerate workers on time, but to pay towards pension funds. So there's two leaks which are plausibly due to corruption within SERA and within the Treasury of South Africa. Treasury of South Africa, using government departments, SOEs and municipalities, is contracting companies without the capacity to perform the functions they're supposed to perform, which is pensions is part of them as well. Look, I think we have made progress. In our last meeting with the FSCA on the 18th of April, if I'm not mistaken, this year, they told us that from their releasing of the reports and of course from the public pressure the EFF has been applying, some companies have been trying to enter into payment agreements with the pension funds that they've been in areas with. And this is as a result of the publicizing of this pressure. Of course, we don't think it's been enough at this stage, which is why we're ramping up the campaign to ensure that the workers' monies are repaid into pension funds. But I think it's a signal that those who are non-compliant with Section 13A of the Pension Funds Act are feeling the pressure. They know that they're going to be blacklisted from making any deals or businesses or tender agreements with government because we're zooming into that space. So that is a step moving forward. But the ultimate goal is to ensure that that 7 billion, 1 billion to the municipal pension funds and 6 billion to private security sector, provident funds and other funds as well, is repaid either directly into those funds, directly to the people if they are no longer operating in the industry, or directly to the families if those workers are now deceased. That is our ultimate goal.
MDN reached out to the Minister of Finance office. However, the department said it would not be able to respond by the time of airing.